Hi, friends. Thank you so much for joining and welcome all of you to this particular show of Masterstroke. And we have with us an esteemed guest, Ashwin Patni from Axis Mutual Fund. Welcome, Ashwin.
Welcome. Thanks a lot for calling me and looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you so much. And a happy Puja, happy Navratri, and Durga Puja to all our esteemed participants as well as Ashwin. In Calcutta, Durga Puja is a big event. This time it is Saturday, Sunday, but otherwise, sometime when it falls on a weekday, we are all closed for 7 days from Monday to Sunday. This time, offices will open mostly on Wednesday, so it's a kind of a 2-day holiday because Saturday and Sunday is in between. So it's a big atmosphere. So Ashwin, first things first, because equity की बात नहीं करें तो मजा नहीं आता. So equity somehow is not going up in the last 2 months, but it is holding up. What are your first thoughts?
So my first thoughts are that whenever market reaches a new level, whenever we've had a very good run, जैसे कि हमने last एक साल में देखा है, typically that is always something that requires a period of consolidation, requires a period where things need to catch up, fundamentals need to catch up. और मार्केट स्ट्रेट लाइन में तो बढ़ता नहीं है कभी भी, थोड़ा ये सब इज पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ द मार्केट वेयर we have a few good months and then few months where it is more neutral. So nothing, I won't overread anything. It is part and parcel, I would say. Nothing really unusual or too much to over interpret in terms of what is going on. Economy is in a good shape, earnings are in a good shape, companies.
Ashwin, we lost you. Are you there? Yeah, please continue, Ashwin.
Sorry. So, economy is doing well, companies are doing well, a lot of liquidity coming into the markets, some great new IPOs, we have seen hit the market. So fundamentally, I think things are in a great shape. So I wouldn't, like I said, I think a good time to remain invested for the long-term perspective, and good time to not get too carried away with the short term. People, this is probably a risk that we have. जब अच्छा ऐसा market चलता है तब people get too worried about short term. Long-term perspective maintain रखें और continue with the ride. Let's not overinterpret.
So one of the things you mentioned is that, there is risk in the market in the short term. So talking about risk, Ashwin, mutual funds तो सही है. आपको कहीं ये नहीं लगता कभी कभी कि इन्वेस्टर्स और एमएफडीज ओवरबोर्ड हो जाते हैं म्यूचुअल फंड्स में और वो जो रिस्क है म्यूचुअल फंड में वो समझ नहीं पाते. सो व्हाट आर द रिस्क इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स?
सो रिस्क सबसे आई वुड से सबसे बड़ा रिस्क और सबसे फंडामेंटल रिस्क है, वो है रिस्क ऑफ नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि हम किस चीज़ में इन्वेस्ट करें. अगर आप अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ इन्वेस्टमेंट करें, अगर आप समझ के इन्वेस्ट करें, तो जो भी रिस्क है उसको आप समझ के जब आप रिस्क को फेस करते हैं देन आप प्रिपेयर्ड होते हैं रिस्क के लिए. लेकिन जब आप किसी रिस्क को बिना पूरी तरह से समझे हुए अगर आप किसी रिस्क में से एक्सपोज होते हैं, तब आप बौखला जाते हैं, आपको समझ में नहीं आता है कि ये मेरे पोर्टफोलियो को हाउ थिंग्स आर प्लेइंग आउट व्हिच आई हैव नॉट अंडरस्टूड. एंड the biggest thing that creates is it creates pressure to take some knee jerk reaction. आप शॉर्ट टर्म नी जर्क रिएक्शन लेते हैं, कुछ चाहे रिडीम करते हैं, चाहे अलग इधर उधर कुछ स्विच करने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो आई वुड से द बिगेस्ट इशू इज नॉट अंडरस्टैंडिंग रिस्क, not understanding what type of product we are putting in, and that is where most of the mistakes get made. अगर आप सोच के और समझ के रिस्क को इन्वेस्ट करेंगे तब आपको पता है. जैसे एक सिंपल एग्जांपल से अगर मैं समझाऊं इस बात, आप इक्विटी में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, आपने कहा कि मैं 5 साल का इन्वेस्टर हूं, लेकिन आप ये नहीं भूल सकते कि इक्विटी मार्केट हर दिन खुलता है, आप भले ही 5 साल के इन्वेस्टर हैं. और जब इक्विटी मार्केट,
दिस इज फैंटास्टिक पॉइंट अश्विन.
अब इक्विटी मार्केट हर दिन खुलता है और हर दिन ट्रेड होता है और हर दिन अखबार में उसके बारे में एक रिपोर्ट आती है. अब जब वो ट्रेड हो रहा है, आज से 2023 से 5 साल 2028 है, लेकिन 2024 या 25 में अगर मार्केट 20% डाउन है, ये चीज आप इन्वेस्ट करते टाइम इस चीज को अगर आपने नहीं समझा कि इक्विटी अप और डाउन होता है, और भले ही आपको 5 साल के पर्सपेक्टिव, लेकिन इंटरिम में अगर ये अप डाउन होगा तब आपका रिएक्शन कैसा होना चाहिए, ये सब चीज अगर आप पहले सोच लेंगे तब आप इन्वेस्ट करेंगे, तो फिर जब मार्केट में ऊपर उतार चढ़ाव आएगा, कुछ भी आएगा, आप उसके लिए प्रिपेयर्ड हैं, आप उस टाइम पे नी जर्क रिएक्शन नहीं करेंगे। तो सोच के समझ के रिस्क को इन्वेस्ट करना पॉसिबल।
I think I love the way of your explanation that कि आप 5 साल के लिए इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, लेकिन मार्केट रोज खुलता है, मार्केट रोज ऊपर नीचे जाएगा। और सो अगर आप 5 साल का सोचेंगे तो अच्छा है, लेकिन रोज रोज का देखेंगे तो ऊपर भी जाएगा, नीचे भी जाएगा। And the second point is that, and as a mutual fund distributor friends, if you can give these kind of examples to the client, your job becomes easier. So I'm just trying to pick an idea कि इफ यू अंडरस्टैंड द रिस्क एंड देन यू गो आउट एंड प्ले। फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आप क्रिकेट खेलने जा रहे हैं, बैटिंग करने जा रहे हैं, सामने से मैल्कम मार्शल की बॉलिंग आने वाली है, और आपको पता नहीं है कि ये क्या रिस्क है, और बिना हेलमेट पहने आपने खेलने के लिए चले गए, तो बड़ा रिस्क है। सो आपको हेलमेट पहन के जाना है। दिस इज व्हाट अश्विन पॉइंट्स वाज दैट कि आपको समझ के जाना है कि मैल्कम मार्शल की बॉल आ रही है, बाउंसर आएगी, चोट लग सकती है, इसलिए हेलमेट पहन के जाओ। तो
And
ओके, या
and this is just to take your analogy further, it is, you have to prepare in advance that what type of bowling you're facing. Is it Malcolm Marshall pace or is it spin? If you go
करेक्ट,
to the pitch and then a short ball comes and then you think, oh, I forgot my helmet,
या देन नहीं
it is
होने
too
वाला।
late. It
यू
is too
कांट गो
late.
टू द पवेलियन एंड गेट योर हेलमेट
Correct.
बैक।
So that is the thing.
So how can one effectively navigate the risk on the portfolio of the client? कैसे safe portfolio को कैसे safe बनाया जाए? What can you do?
So I would say the that is where MFDs have a huge role to play, which is to help, first and foremost, investors and help the investors understand what are their objectives. A lot of times what happens कि हमें लगता है कि हमें पता है क्या चाहिए, लेकिन हमने fully thought through नहीं किया होता है. So asking a few questions about liquidity, about horizon, risk appetite, any near-term objectives, far-term objectives. So these are the things which are fairly straightforward discussions. ऐसा कोई बहुत complexity नहीं है इसमें, लेकिन अगर आप वो 4-5 questions in a sensible way, if you can bring out in your discussion with the client, it also helps client think through his situation and give you a good perspective. And how can you then start molding that discussion in towards what does it mean from an asset allocation perspective, what does it mean from a horizon perspective. So I would say, what I would recommend is that it is important for, uh, before we start the journey, for any investor to understand their risk appetite. MFDs can play a huge role. There are so many types of risk profilers, so many types of, there are various tools. I mean, tools की कोई shortage नहीं है. There are many tools. AMCs have it. There are free available tools in the market also. These days so many are there. This can even be done through a simple conversation. It doesn't require any,
So Ashwin, I will
significant.
just take a pause here, and I
Yeah.
want to ask you. You mentioned about risk profiler and risk
Yes.
appetite, which is important, and everybody should do it. But let's get to the practical side of it. There are mutual fund distributors who go out and sell SIPs to the client.
Yeah.
Out of so many people who are listening to this conversation, watching this, वो कहते हैं ब्रजेश, अश्विन, हम तो क्लाइंट के पास जाते हैं, उनको 10,000 की एसआईपी करनी होती है, 25,000 की एसआईपी करनी होती है, हम क्या रिस्क एनालाइज करें उनका? हम तो जाकर के उनको बताते हैं एसआईपी में डालोगे 12% आएगा, 15% आएगा, विद डिस्क्लेमर कितना पैसा बन सकता है। हाउ टू हैंडल एट दैट लेवल ऑल्सो? शुड वन गो फॉर रिस्क प्रोफाइलर? हाउ टू हैंडल द कंप्लायंस एंगल? You're, because as a mutual fund distributor, you are not doing the financial planning of the client, but you are supposed to do
Correct.
risk profiling as per the law.
Correct.
So,
So
but
I
the
think that is where
SIP
then,
के लिए कैसे risk profiling करें?
that's a great question, and I would, let me create some scenarios. For example, today, we are all lucky that in mutual funds there are so many, within SIPs also there are so many variations which are possible, right? You can do a straight monthly SIP, you can do a rising SIP, you can combine SIP with SWP, you can do an STP. So just a simple SIP itself can be given so many different twists, if you know the situation. Now, if the conversation with the client is that if you understand their liquidity, is it a monthly liquidity? Is it something that is more lump sum? Are they in a position where they have visibility on the next 2-3 years? Can they commit to certain cash flows? Are they in a position where they understand that returns can go up and down? Like, what I'll give you a data point that we have these SIPs where many 20-30% of the people, uh, when they are putting the SIP, after the first installment they don't continue. So many cases where SIPs are started, after 12-18 months there are large amount of drop offs. So what we have to do is, a lot of that is coming from, you know, misunderstanding of that SIP or misunderstanding of the liquidity situation. So लोगों को ये as an MFD what you can do, बहुत टाइम नहीं लगता है इन चीज़ों में, कि आप SIP भी अगर सजेस्ट कर रहे हैं, कैसे आप डिसाइड करेंगे कि आप 10,000 की SIP सजेस्ट करेंगे कि 15,000 की, कि 20,000 की? कैसे आप डिसाइड करेंगे कि वो SIP किस फंड में होनी चाहिए, लार्ज कैप, मल्टी कैप, फ्लेक्सी कैप, मिड कैप? कैसे आप डिसाइड करेंगे कि एक फंड में होना चाहिए कि दो फंड में होना चाहिए, एक फंड हाउस में होना चाहिए, दो फंड हाउस में होना चाहिए? दीज आर ऑल थिंग्स दैट यू कैन डू टू हेल्प navigate the client, you know, and make it easier for them to continue the journey. ऐसा ना हो कि 12-18 months में they start to drop off, because then that becomes that very wasteful कि आपने start भी किया SIP, you took that decision but you could not continue the decision.
So Ashwin, let us take the case of the current year.
Yes.
We all understand that small cap में ज्यादा risk होता है, mid cap में ज्यादा risk होता है as compared to large cap. What is your message to MFDs looking at data in the last 12 months? That the only inflow, massive inflows have come into small caps followed by mid caps, and they are all trading at all-time highs. Isn't that a great risk? What is your observation on how to handle this?
So I would say a simple data point, and just pardon my numbers because they could be a little bit off, because
No problem.
just yesterday in office we were talking about this, that I think 12-month return on large cap is something like 8-9%, and 12-month return on small cap is something like 30%. Now, all of us track the market. Hopefully, most of us have been tracking it for many years. It is not logical to have this kind of gaps. You know,
Correct.
in the, even if we say that the growth potential is there, even if we say that economy is doing well, earnings will come, but in the same asset class within equity, within listed, to have, you know, 9-10% versus 30% kind of a gap, it is a very very large gap, and normally this kind of a gap is not frankly sustainable. एंड टिपिकली वो रिटेल इन्वेस्टर में हमने टाइम एंड टाइम अगेन देखा है कि वो थोड़ा सा रिटर्न चेजिंग वाला एलिमेंट होता ही है, आप चाहे कुछ भी कर लो, आज भी वही हो रहा है. 2 years 3 years we've had a great journey on small cap, mid cap. The historical numbers are looking fantastic. That is where the SIP flow is getting, where the lump sum flow is going. But that is again to your previous question on what role MFD can play. That is exactly the kind of point that MFD can make. कि देखिए आप 12 मंथ, अगर आपकी जर्नी 5 साल की है, 10 साल की है, आपको 1 साल की रिटर्न से आप उससे स्वे हो गई हैं, तो then it will not give you a complete picture. We have seen this situation play out many times. When the pain comes in mid cap, small cap, then it also can be very very painful. We have seen that also many times. So it is very important in time like these that we don't get carried away. We maintain that balance on the portfolio. Whether it is, if an investor has the risk appetite, I'm not saying don't invest in small cap, mid cap. All I'm saying is portfolio should not become lopsided. There is, should be a balanced portfolio. अगर आप historical return नहीं ऐसा होता और आपका normal allocation, let's say 3 साल पहले अगर 70-30 था, 60-40 था large cap mid cap के बीच में, try to maintain that balance. Don't get carried away just because we've had 2 good years and suddenly start putting 70-80 in mid caps.
Yeah, so maybe we can put in a word here that, friends, as mutual fund distributors, कई बार ऐसा लगता है कि गलत हो रहा है, नहीं डालना चाहिए, लेकिन मार्केट लगातार तेज हो रहा है और क्लाइंट्स पुश करते हैं. एंड द चैट बॉक्स, आई विल लाइक सम ओपिनियन फ्रॉम द एमएफडीज हु आर पार्टिसिपेटिंग. इज दिस स्टेटमेंट ट्रू? कई बार ऐसा लगता है कि मार्केट्स तो एक तरफ जा रहा है और क्लाइंट्स आर इंसिस्टिंग टू इन्वेस्ट इन स्मॉल कैप, मिड कैप, और हमें भी ऐसा लगता है ये सही नहीं है, फिर भी हम बेच रहे हैं. हाउ टू हैंडल दिस एंड हाउ टू कंट्रोल दिस impulse that investors तो रिस्क ले ही रहे हैं unnecessary, म्यूचुअल फंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर भी आर एक्सपोजिंग देमसेल्व्स knowing, और भगवान भरोसे जिसको कहते हैं कि डालो देखेंगे. इज इट वर्थ इट?
करेक्ट. सो डेफिनेटली आई वुड अग्री कि मतलब अगर क्लाइंट एंड MFDs, व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस, व्हाट इज इट दैट एज MFDs हमारी जो जिम्मेदारी है या हमारी जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है ना, अगर हम भी वैसे ही स्वे हो रहे हैं जैसे क्लाइंट स्वे हो रहे हैं, देन व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस? And that is where our value addition comes in, because that is what clients will remember, in 2 years, 3 years time, 5 years. We are hoping for the client relationship to be there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, not there only for 1-2 years. आज जो easy sell करना है वो sell करके आप लंबी relationship नहीं बनाएंगे. You have to do what will work in the long term.
So as Dipti is saying, some clients understand, some clients don't. And the answer I think about Ashwin is saying, Dipti, is that we have to make them understand. We have to understand risk better than the client, because clients के पास तो पैसे हैं, उन्होंने आपसे पूछ लिया, डाल दिया, और वो ये सोचते हैं कि आप हैंडल कर लेंगे. It is like a doctor. Ashwin, please opine on this. It's like a doctor. When you go to a doctor, you expect the doctor to do the right things to you, even if it is not in your favor, or even if it is not something which you like. You hope that doctor will be insane mind. Insane nahi, insane. Not insane, insane. Ki doctors will do what is right for the patient, even if in the short term the patient is not liking it. In the same way, Deepti and others, if you think this is not right, you have to tell the client, no, you can't do it. You can't go for the short term that clients are saying, kar dete hain, dekha jayega kind of thing. But Ashwin, I want to ask you a little tricky question now in terms of debt funds. Now, and this is let me play the devil's role. Debt funds have been a devil in the last few years in the mutual fund industry. We considered it safe and we sold it, and they are safe. Principally, they are safe, but mark to market is very high. And people have not been able to understand the risk of the debt funds, both investors as well as mutual fund distributors. And because of the rising interest rates and some credit events happening, the entire industry has gone safe now, and they are not taking credit calls mostly.
Yeah.
And many mutual fund distributors, taking cue of this, have stopped selling debt funds. How to analyze the risk of the debt funds? What to do in these scenarios? Should we ignore debt funds? If we sell debt funds, there is a risk of not getting return. Yesterday, one of my friends was telling me, Brijesh, I'm getting 7.5% in bank FD. Why should I invest in 6.5% kind of yields of YTMs of debt funds? So how do you handle the risk in debt funds, or the perceived risk in debt funds, before suggesting it to the client? Because that is more risky now.
Yeah, I think in a way, the experience has of the last 5 years is actually, I would say, uh, done our job easier as a industry, because today you have both, you have example of both sides. पहले क्या risk था कि people were not seeing the risk on debt, and debt was seen as relatively low risk, or in some cases even risk free. And we had seen that, even in situations where high credit risks were there in the funds, people were not really appreciating कि वो क्या risk है, and they were saying जो YTM है वो yield है वो तो return तो मिल जाएगा. I think we've now seen the other side. So actually, I would say it is a very healthy situation, and this is where data can be in our friend, right? So I would say, let's look at data. Let's look at number of fund houses, and I can give example from Axis, but this exercise can be done in other fund houses also. The data that is there is that, despite the ups and downs, if you see 5-year, 7-year returns in categories like medium term, short term, our fund, strategic bond fund or short term fund, if you see, the return profile on a 3-5 year basis is very stable. And today, the starting yield is also in line. I think we had couple of years post COVID when yields became extraordinarily low, but I think those have also normalized. So again, I think with people who have a reasonable horizon, what we find is that these kind of funds are able to deliver pretty stable 3-5 year kind of experience for investors. And this is, like I said, data is our friend. We should really embrace data here and go to investors in a very prepared way. What was the situation in, if people are worried about, for example, 2019-20, where a number of events happened, what was the impact? Now NAV data is there in the public domain. We can actually put a clear, what was the NAV impact? If somebody was there for 5 years, 7 years, what was the NAV impact? The reality is, like I can tell you for Axis, we have gone through it completely in a smooth way. There was not much NAV impact. People who have been invested with us on 5-year, 7-year basis, their holding period returns have been pretty stable and consistent. So I would say this is what, again, going back to that, if people understand the risk, understand the situation, that is what helps us create the story which is the right story for investors, and that is what helps us correctly position what fund is there. Now, we should not confuse ultra short or liquid or things which are for cash management versus those funds which I was talking about, which are short medium term, which are meant more for slightly longer term allocations. But essentially, what I would recommend is look at debt in a, I think the mistake we all make is equity can give 12 15, debt will give 7 8, then what is the point? Or just you saying FD versus, I think what is FD versus, we all know the difference, right? There is a liquidity advantage, there is a flexibility to look at different strategies, there is a mark to market potential, there is an ability to look at different kind of diversified portfolio. FD is ultimately taking a risk on just one entity. So there are the upside, the benefits are very clear. I think we have to just find the clear case. Just like I think the discussion we were having about small cap earlier. Data can be our friend. Just go back to the last time the small cap had a really big fall and what was the impact on NAV. And if we can go to investors prepared that, okay, fine, when you've had a 30% rally, but in the past, we've also seen the big correction in small cap. And that is why we are telling you to be cautious. Then we can really use data as our friend to help position the right thing for investors.
So friends, if you have any question for Ashwin, please put it in the Q&A box. And my final question to you, Ashwin, don't you think that mutual fund कंपनियों ने investors और MFDs की habit बिगाड़ दी है because they have managed it so very well in 20 years that now MFDs and investors are fully dependent on AMCs to handle the risk part and they only want to sell. People, do you agree with my question? Please write yes if this is a good question. कि MFDs sell funds thinking AMC will take care of it. और हमने तो माल बेचना था, हमने तो माल बेच दिया. अब risk और return AMC जाने, because you have delivered so well in the past that now you handle the risk. How will you answer this question, Ashwin?
I will answer it in two parts. I think it's absolutely the AMC's responsibility to manage the risk. But it is the risk that it does investor in MFD know what risk they have signed up for. If they have done it with their eyes open and they have understood the risk of a particular strategy, then the AMC can be trusted with that responsibility and AMC's job to actually take care of that risk. Lot of time, unfortunately, what also happens, and we get a lot of such investor feedback, backlash also, because sometimes people unfortunately don't understand that risk, and then they invest in a product which and come to the AMC that this product has not done this or not done that, when the product's mandate or actually risk situation was very different from what the investor has perceived. Or so that is where the confusion or the potential for mismatch can be. अगर आपने सोच समझ के understanding के साथ किया है, then absolutely the job is the AMC, because it is what the AMC is charging the fees for. It is their job to manage that portfolio and give investors the experience for which they have signed up.
So essentially what Ashwin is saying, and which is right, and which I observed, is that कि इतना अच्छा हिस्ट्री रहा है कि कभी कभी आंख बंद हो जाती है कि सामने वाले को दे दिया, सामने वाला कर रहा अच्छा ही होगा, हम रिस्क भूल जाते हैं. तो दोस्तों, this is the time to reflect that AMCs are good, they are managing the risk, but they are managing the risk on the portfolio, not at an individual client level. And clients can come at different times. And so if somebody invested 5 years ago will have a different experience with the fund house, whereas somebody investing in the same funds 5 months back can have a different experience. And the AMC will not know about these 5 months and 5-year investors differently के साथ में manage नहीं कर सकते. वो तो single strategy के साथ fund manage करते हैं. So it is your job, our job, to have each of the clients' individual risk appetite and which fund and where and how to sell. So sometimes we trust blindly, which is okay in case of mutual fund, because mutual funds are good, mutual funds sahi hai. But I think you need to do a little more due diligence about schemes, about the client before investing. Is that a fair opinion, Ashwin?
Absolutely. I think I would say schemes and clients, and I think you brought a very important point. Different clients come in different market environments. हम लोग अभी बात कर रहे थे small cap market environment की. I would say any client which has come 3 years ago, their journey, and another client that say signs up today, their journey, there could be very significant difference, and that is where, although both will come in the same fund, but that is where, as MFDs, it becomes our job to handhold them in the correct way.
So fantastic. Let me see if there are any questions, Ashwin, for you, which is relevant to the topic today. Bharat is saying, sometime it is not in the hand of even the doctor to handle the risk. Any of this is not a question, but just an observation.
I would say that today, let's take that scenario only, that analogy only, कि आप डॉक्टर हैं, आप एक सही चीज रेकमेंड करना चाहते हैं पेशेंट को. पेशेंट ने गूगल से अपना खुद ही सेल्फ डायग्नोज कर लिया है और पेशेंट आपकी बात नहीं मानने को तैयार है. कहीं कहीं हमको भी टफ डिसीजन लेना पड़ेगा एज एन एमएफडी, कि अगर हमको दिखता है कि ये सिचुएशन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बढ़ सकती है, जहाँ पे इन्वेस्टर इज मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग द सिचुएशन, द इन्वेस्टर इज नॉट विलिंग टू पे हीड, हमको भी थोड़ा कॉस्ट बेनिफिट करना चाहिए कि हर बिजनेस बराबर नहीं है. अगर वो बिजनेस पोटेंशियली हमें बाद में बैकलैश दे सकता है या नुकसान दे सकता है, देन वी हैव टू टेक अ ड्रॉ हार्ड लाइन एंड से कि बस certain things I am not in a position to comment. Maybe it may hurt some discussions in the short term, but hopefully these people will appreciate us in the medium to long term as the things play out, and they will remember that we have some clear sort of rules.
Nice. Anurag Dodmani is saying, and see, Ashwin, sometime being on the other side of the table, it may be a little difficult for MFDs to understand AMC's view. And sometimes the same happens that the AMC may not have been the client facing, so they don't understand the client. What Anurag is saying, if sometime we do not do as the client is asking us to do, he may leave us, and that fear, risk appetite धरा का धरा रह जाता है, सब हवा में हो जाता है और हम माल बेच देते हैं. So how to handle this?
Because client, देखिए client, आप ये सब करेंगे, client फिर भी जा सकता है, करेक्ट. आज ओपन मार्केट है, इंटरनेट है, टीवी है, मीडिया है, क्लाइंट के पास 1000 अलग अलग सोर्सेज हैं डेटा का, बॉम्बार्ड कर रहा है हर तरफ से. अगर हम डर के मारे बिजनेस करेंगे तो वो सही अप्रोच नहीं है. हमें क्लैरिटी बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम स्पेशलिस्ट हैं, राइट. हम एज इंडस्ट्री पार्टिसिपेंट्स वी आर सपोज टू बी स्पेशलिस्ट. तो हमें ग्राउंड रूल्स बनाना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हमें किस तरह से हमारा वैल्यू एडिशन होगा, नहीं होगा. हमारा काम फॉर्म भरना नहीं है, हमारा काम वैल्यू एडिशन करना है. अगर वो हम सही तरीके से करेंगे, हो सकता है 100 कॉन्वर्सेशंस में 10 कॉन्वर्सेशन, 15 कॉन्वर्सेशन हमारे फेवर में नहीं जाए, लेकिन एटलीस्ट जो 80-85 कॉन्वर्सेशंस हमारे साथ होगी, उसमें क्लाइंट के साथ अंडरस्टैंडिंग, मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग की रिस्क कम होगी, क्लाइंट की पार्टनरशिप आपके साथ स्ट्रॉन्गर होगी लॉन्ग टर्म में, क्योंकि उसकी आप दोनों ने एक बहुत अच्छी क्लैरिटी के साथ जर्नी को चालू किया है. तो इट्स नॉट ईजी. मैं नहीं कहता, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली आप लोग डे टू डे बिजनेस करते हैं, आपको चैलेंजेस आपको पता है आपके, लेकिन मेरा ऑनेस्ट सिंसियर फीडबैक ये होगा कि डोंट come to it from a trying to defend business. I think we have to come to it from a that क्या चीज, क्या अप्रोच सही है, और अगर तो उस सही अप्रोच के फ्रेमवर्क के अंदर थोड़ा एडजस्टमेंट के साथ चीज कर सकते हैं, तो डेफिनेटली वी शुड ट्राई एंड मेक इट हैपन. बट वी शुड आल्सो ड्रॉ अ लाइन. And I think we have all seen the example, right? In the credit risk fund, I would give as an example 5 years ago, 6 years ago. People may have said that हमें करना है, लेकिन जब things go wrong, then the MFD can get blamed, right? So then why do you want to get into that kind of, today a small cap scenario, somebody can say मुझे करना है, and अगर market goes down 20-30%, they may come back and say कि अरे आपने मुझे क्यों नहीं बताया, warn क्यों नहीं किया आपने.
So fantastic. So we will end on this note with a comment which I keep hearing from people. एक ड्राइवर कभी भी परफेक्ट नहीं होता. जब वो गाड़ी लेके चलाता है, अगर वो 10 साल, 20 साल, 30 साल का भी ड्राइविंग एक्सपीरियंस हो, इट डजंट मीन दैट ही नोज एवरीथिंग. द मोमेंट यू हैव द व्हील्स अंडर योर कमांड, there's always a risk. So every time you should think that I am not the best driver, I am still learning and I still have to navigate the streets in a safe manner. So as a mutual fund distributor friends, if you are working for 1 year or 10 year or 20 year, रिस्क को आपको हमेशा ध्यान में रख करके क्लाइंट को सजेस्ट करना होगा, बिकॉज किसी भी टाइम अगर आप गलती करेंगे तो नुकसान क्लाइंट का होने वाला है, तकलीफ होने वाली है, और क्लाइंट जाएगा तो आपका एक बिजनेस जाता है, मगर क्लाइंट का पैसा खराब होता है। सो इस चीज को ध्यान में रखना है कि जब आप गाड़ी ड्राइव कर रहे हैं तो आपकी जिम्मेदारी खुद को बचाना तो है ही है, सामने वाले पेडेस्ट्रियन को भी बचाना आपकी जिम्मेदारी है, आप दूसरे को हिट ना करें वो भी आपकी जिम्मेदारी है, एंड देयर इज नथिंग कॉल्ड परफेक्शन इन द गेम ऑफ ड्राइविंग। With this, I will say thank you so much, Ashwin, for being with us today to make us understand the risk of investing in mutual funds. And it's always lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Ashwin.
Thank you so much. Great having me. Thank you.